Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll just get started in a minute or two, right at the top of the hour once a few more people join. So good that you're here early because we plan to start on time. We like commissioning that's on time, right? While we're waiting, if you could just open up the chat window. I've got my chat window open here, and maybe just let me know where you're calling in from or the type of projects you're working on. I'll just get my screen shared here so we're ready to go. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen there. So I'm here in central Canada, in Winnipeg. If you don't know where Winnipeg is, a lot of people don't. It's right halfway between Vancouver and Toronto. So we're right in the middle of Canada. All right. And we're right at the top of the hour, so a few more people might join as we get started here, but that's just great. So today's presentation is on commissioning project management. We're going to go over the top-rated commissioning software to use and the industry best workflows and templates to follow. So you're going to get the #1 framework to standardize and streamline your commissioning. So like I mentioned, this presentation is meant to be interactive, so please pull up the chat if you have any questions as we're going through the material. Shoot your questions into the chat. I'll watch and make sure I get them answered. I'll also have a Q&A at the end of this presentation, so feel free to ask any questions as we go through the material or at the end if you'd like, and we'll help you out with all your commissioning questions. Now, I've used the commissioning frameworks that we're going to go through here and discuss on several projects. I've used these commissioning project management frameworks in the power industry, working on hydroelectric generation plants and transmission projects here in Manitoba. I've used these same frameworks in the aerospace industry, building satellites and rockets for the Canadian Space Agency. I've used these commissioning frameworks in the water treatment industry, expanding and upgrading a wastewater treatment plant facility not too far away from here. I'm also on the organizing committee for the Commissioning Professional Society, where we host an annual event in Houston, Texas, and have some of the best and brightest commissioning minds gather together and discuss the challenges in the industry and how we can elevate the importance of commissioning on projects. It's a really good event. So I'm not the only one that's getting results with this approach to commissioning. We've helped several others standardize and streamline their commissioning workflows on projects as well. For example, Sheldon or Jonald or Kale and many others, they all tell me after working with us that this was an eye-opener. They had no idea of everything that was fully required for commissioning and how to standardize their processes. They tell me that this was the first commissioning system they've found that fully matches with what really happens at site. And that's because it is. This is based on real world practical experience. This isn't textbook theoretical stuff. This is hands-on, get the job done commissioning processes. They all tell me that they knew that they needed to upgrade their commissioning workflows for years, and they had thought about it, but they were just never able to quite get it done. And they appreciated our help to guide them through the process to advance some of their systems. So you can go to our website at commissioningandstartup.com. At the top, you can click on success stories and you can read about the people that we've worked with and the experiences that they're having and how we've helped them out with commissioning. So everyone's saying that these systems and processes are great stuff. It's helping a lot of people on projects, and this stuff can definitely help you on your projects too. So just to be clear though, this is not technical commissioning. If you're here looking for how to do an electrical high pot test, or if you're looking for flushing standards for food grade piping, or if you're looking for other technical details of how to do some of the testing, you're not going to get any of that here. That's not what this presentation is about. But technical commissioning is not actually what's missing on a lot of projects, though, is it? There's a lot of smart people working on projects, and they'll get testing completed one way or the other. What's often missing on projects is the structure that's supposed to go around the technical commissioning. What's missing are the systems and processes to standardize and streamline your commissioning efforts on site to complete commissioning as efficiently as possible. So let's look at a simple org chart. There's obviously three main functions on a project, right? We need to get it designed, we need to get it installed during construction, and we need to get it tested during commissioning to make sure everything works. So if you're working on an EPC project and design and construction are part of the same group, this all still applies as well. There's typically someone to manage the design, and the design manager is following design best practices to coordinate all the disciplines of engineering. There's always someone to manage construction. There's an entire industry dedicated to construction project management. But where are the systems and processes for commissioning? On a lot of projects, they only exist as spreadsheets or don't exist at all. And commissioning is unorganized and a scramble to complete at the end. When the last part of projects, the most complex part, when everything has to start working together during commissioning, has no standardized systems or processes to finish projects, commissioning can end up being a complete nightmare at the end of projects. There's a gap in the industry, and the last 20% of projects is often not very well managed. And it's no wonder projects are late and over budget when project teams have no standardized systems or processes for commissioning. And spreadsheets don't count. So I know a lot of people use spreadsheets on projects, but that's not really a structured system to manage commissioning. That's maybe something that's been adopted over the years because there's been no better processes. But with the systems that exist now, there's really no reason to still be using spreadsheets on projects when we should be leveraging these tools that help us better manage our projects. So this is the gap that we help you fill by implementing systems and processes to standardize your commissioning so you can complete commissioning as efficiently as possible and save time and money on projects with more efficient commissioning. So this presentation is for project managers that want an organized approach to finishing capital projects during commissioning, for commissioning managers and directors that need to upgrade from spreadsheet processes, and for companies that want to avoid losing time and money during capital project commissioning at the end of projects. Without systems and processes to standardize commissioning, when commissioning is left to the end or when paper and spreadsheets are used for tracking, project teams are just gambling. There's no way to control the end of your project during commissioning. It's the Wild West, and all you can do is roll the dice and hope for the best at the end. It's a crapshoot. So let's get that fixed for you with systems and processes to standardize your commissioning so you can complete commissioning much more efficiently. We help project teams determine the top-rated commissioning software to use, the industry best commissioning processes to follow, so you can complete commissioning as efficiently as possible and save time and money on projects. And at the end of this presentation, if you'd like some more help to get standardized systems and processes for your commissioning, I'll show you how with the services that we offer so you can save time and money during commissioning too. So if this all sounds interesting, then I'm glad you're here. I want to share some statistics with you that are quite concerning in the industry. This is Professor Bent Flibberg. He's from the University of Oxford, and over the last several decades, he's compiled a database of over 16,000 projects. He's also written a book. It's called How Big Things Get Done. It was released last year. It's an excellent book. If you haven't read it, you should get a copy of it and check it out. Professor Flivberg's research shows that only 8.5% of projects are on time and on budget. That means over 90% of projects are late and over budget, and that's terrible. The construction industry definitely has a terrible track record of completing projects, of which commissioning is a big part of completing projects. The complexity of completing projects during commissioning is one of the main contributing factors to delays when there are no systems or processes to standardize your commissioning. A lot of projects ignore commissioning until it's too late. They're missing important aspects in contracts, or they're still using paper and spreadsheets for commissioning, but these outdated methods can't keep up with the volume of work that's out there on projects these days. So today I'm going to show you how to structure your commissioning so you can beat these odds and have your project succeed with commissioning. So let me know in the chat, what's been your experience on projects? Have you experienced well-structured commissioning with systems and processes? Have your projects followed the cowboy commissioning approach with spreadsheets. What's been your experience on projects? Have you been completing commissioning smoothly? Has it generally been going pretty well? Are you having problems with some of the transition from construction to commissioning? Is there things that are delaying you and causing snags during commissioning? Are spreadsheets working well for you? Let me know in the chat what's been your experience on projects if you would like to share how your projects have been going with commissioning. Now, to be clear, there are lots of challenges in the construction industry, and a good book to read is Built to Fail by Todd Zabel. It's a brand new book. It was just released earlier this year, and Mr. Zabel talks about all the things wrong with the current approach to design and construction, and he also talks about what to do to fix it. And with these challenges that exist in earlier phases of projects, it means you need to have a robust system for commissioning to be ready to face these challenges and ensure that you can successfully complete your projects during commissioning. So we're determined to get you the best methods for commissioning with the best tools and processes required to get the job done efficiently, so you're ready to face any of these challenges that come your way during commissioning. So when I give this presentation, the first thing people often ask me about commissioning is just tell me what to do. Just give me the checklists or the steps to follow. Just tell me how to commission an AC switchyard, for example, or what software do I need to use for the water industry? Just tell me the best software to use for a data center, and I'll follow that. That'll tell me what I need to do for commissioning. And when I hear these types of questions, I already know that these projects are in trouble because there's a little bit more to it than that. You're never going to find a single document that shows you the steps for commissioning, and you're not going to find that magic software that tells you how to commission your project, because each project, of course, is different, right? You need specific workflows applied to your unique commissioning circumstances. So first, let's address the problems of what not to do for commissioning before we talk about the systems and processes that are required for success. Projects are having problems. We know this. The data tells us that 9 out of 10 projects are late and over budget. Projects are losing time during commissioning, and they're missing their in-service dates. They're losing money due to delays during commissioning, and projects can be a nightmare at the end if you don't get this stuff right at the beginning. But why is this? Why are projects struggling with commissioning? We need to address these problems before I can teach you what to do. Now, there's two common mistakes that are often made on projects, and just by fixing these two mistakes, projects can see huge improvements. So what are these two mistakes? The first mistake is leaving commissioning to the end of projects. We've been told for the longest time that commissioning takes place at the end of projects, right? We need to finish construction and then we'll test everything at the end. But this is actually not true. This is, of course, what most projects do. They cross their fingers and roll the dice at the end. And maybe you've had this experience on projects, but this is what leads to problems on projects. In fact, to be successful, the commissioning process starts right at the beginning during your feed and during your procurement processes. And you must make sure that systems and processes for commissioning are established early in your projects if you want on-site testing to go smoothly at the end. It's the only way to guide projects to a successful finish during commissioning. When commissioning is left to the end, there's just no way to be proactive. All problems are left to the end of your project, and there's no time to recover. There is no systems-based approach to completing projects, and the damage is done before on-site testing even begins. It's exactly like Stephen Covey says in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. His habit number 2, begin with the end in mind. And you must be doing this on your capital projects and having commissioning systems and processes right from the start. You must have a clear vision of your project objectives right from the start, which means you must have visibility and clarity on how to complete your project during commissioning, which is defined by the systems and processes that you establish early in your projects. You can think about it this way. You want your projects to be successfully completed, so you need to define what that success looks like during commissioning right at the beginning of your project. The only way to do this is by planning projects from right to left instead of from left to right, like most projects do, which means you need systems and processes for commissioning early in your projects so that everyone on your project can focus on what success looks like during commissioning. There's just no way to successfully complete projects unless you start with the end in mind. It's like that for everything. And of course, projects are no different, right? You wouldn't start your family fun summer road trip without first determining where you're going to go. Of course not. Your kids in the back would drive you nuts asking, are we there yet? When you don't even know where you're going. And this is why it's critical to implement standardized commissioning systems and processes early in your projects so everyone knows the objectives to achieve during commissioning and the goalposts are clearly defined for everyone to see. And everyone understands how their role contributes to successful commissioning and startup so that all project groups are aligned and working towards the same goal. Mistake number 2, a lot of projects are still using paper and spreadsheets to manage commissioning. And in today's information age, they're still using paper and spreadsheets to track completion of projects, but this no longer works. Maybe this worked 20 years ago, but projects are just far too complex now. There's just too many documents and too much information, and it's impossible to keep track of manually in Excel. We need real-time data to make informed decisions, and we can't wait until Friday's spreadsheet is updated to get the information that we need. We need access to information right now. Successful project teams are no longer using paper and spreadsheets, and I'll show you what they're using. When projects are using paper and spreadsheets, there's just no way to show everyone what success looks like during commissioning. It's an inefficient way to get the job done. Things get missed and cause delays during commissioning, and your spreadsheets will never give clarity to design and construction groups on what commissioning is all about. And when everyone has a different idea of how to finish projects during commissioning, it's super difficult to complete projects when everyone is going in different directions and everyone has a different idea of what's required for commissioning. With no clear view of commissioning, project teams end up spending more time talking about the work and talking about what to do for commissioning rather than actually getting the work done. And we don't need more meetings. We need a better way to organize our teams so we can get projects actually completed more efficiently in the field. When projects make one or more of these 2 common mistakes, when they're leaving commissioning to the end, or if they're still using paper and spreadsheets to manage commissioning, we call this cowboy commissioning. When projects suffer from cowboy commissioning, the work is just inefficient, you miss your deadlines, everything is a last-minute scramble, and delays during commissioning become very expensive to address. So is there any questions so far before we move on? Is this making sense? Do you agree with what I've been saying here? Or have you had different experiences on projects? What's been your experience with cowboy commissioning? Is that typically how your projects have gone? Is more the cowboy commissioning approach, or have you got more structured processes for commissioning? Let me know some of your experiences in the chat. I'm interested. All right. So let's start with the processes required for commissioning. These processes are what's modeled in your software. And then after this, we'll review the software systems that people are typically using to model these commissioning processes. So there's 3 frameworks that are required for commissioning project management. There's our planning frameworks, there's our construction completion frameworks, and our on-site commissioning and startup frameworks. And these make up the integrated completions process. When you establish integrated completion processes early in your projects, everyone starts with the end in mind, and they have a clear picture of what success looks like during commissioning. You reduce the risk on completing your project significantly during commissioning, and you're able to complete commissioning much more efficiently, saving your projects millions of dollars and months of schedule due to delays and cost overruns. Most importantly, you're able to deliver high quality systems that can be used for decades of reliable operation. However, when you don't have standardized processes, it may seem like you're making progress on your projects until on-site testing starts, right? And then nothing works and things are missing and there's constant delays. You're losing time during commissioning and you're scrambling to get things finished at the end. You're faced with costly delays and you end up with cowboy commissioning that takes much longer to complete. Without standardized commissioning processes on projects, well, what do most project teams try to do? They focus on design and they focus on construction, and commissioning unfortunately gets forgotten about, right? Everybody's focused on the issues of the day, which would be design or construction or wherever the project's at. They end up dumping all the earlier design and construction problems later on the commissioning guys at the end of the project, hoping they'll just figure it out and make this stuff all work, right? But all this does is defer all your risk to the end of projects. This is, of course, what a lot of projects do, and they've got their fingers crossed and hoping things will work in the end and that the commissioning guys will sort it out. But what really happens is the blame game starts, finger pointing of what went wrong earlier, and all your commissioning guys can do is point out the mistakes that were made earlier in your project. Your claims start to pile up, and I guess the plan is to fight it out in court later. But this is hardly a good approach to finishing projects, even though this is what happens on a lot of projects. There is a better way when you start your projects with the end in mind by implementing integrated completion processes to standardize your commissioning on projects. So first, why is it called integrated completions processes? Well, that's because commissioning is integrated into all earlier stages of projects during our procurement processes when we're developing contracts, during our design processes, preliminary design reviews and detailed design reviews, during our construction processes, our construction quality processes. We need to have commissioning integrated, and particularly during our construction completions processes as we're transitioning from completing construction and moving into commissioning activities. It's the only way projects are successful when you standardize your commissioning processes early in projects to give your projects a strong finish during commissioning. So let's go through each framework that's on the screen here. This is required, the processes that are required to be set up in your commissioning software. So I'll go through it fairly quickly because there's a lot of detail here, but what I'll do is I'll send you this flow chart with the details after this presentation so you can review it in a little bit more detail and take your time to read and review it. So the first section here is our planning frameworks, and there's 10 project management frameworks that are required for planning. The first one on the screen is our contracts. So when we're preparing our design contracts and particularly our construction contracts, there's certain structure that needs to go in there defining how the project is going to transition from construction to commissioning. And when we look at contracts, they're usually pretty light on details for commissioning. Sometimes there's a lot of information in there on the technical commissioning, but contracts are often missing details on the commercial and project management aspects of commissioning, which makes it very difficult to complete projects when contracts are missing this information. So it's important that commissioning is involved to set contracts properly in the correct direction at the beginning of projects. Our feed processes are the stage to allow lessons learned from later in the project to be fed back into earlier stages of the project. So I'm sure you've been part of lessons learned on projects. Projects are very good at gathering lessons learned, but they're usually pretty bad at incorporating lessons learned. Is that lessons learned document quickly gets filed and forgotten about and doesn't really get applied properly on the next project. Well, your feed processes are the point in time to do that, to have commissioning and operational involvement during your preliminary design reviews, during your detailed design reviews, to make sure that design packages that are being created this early in the project are going to align with what's needed for later in the project. There may even be some more detailed design reviews, some workshops required for more specific process control narratives or control system reviews, HMI screen reviews. This is the process to do that, to make sure that that feedback loop is completed and commissioning is involved in our feed processes. So next are FAT and IFAT processes. So I'm sure you're familiar with some of the factory acceptance testing that we've been doing for decades for more common equipment, testing a pump in the factory, run it for a few hours, measure 3 points on the pump curve. All good. That's usually pretty straightforward. But when it comes to more complex systems like our control and protection systems, our automation systems, we need to be testing both the hardware and the software in the factory before this equipment is shipped to site. It's the only way to make sure that these complex items function correctly when they arrive at site. If that software integration is being deferred to site later, that's typically too late in the project to do that integration, and the design often gets deferred till that point as well. If you're doing that design, debugging, and integration on site with the hardware and the software for the first time, then you're going to add a lot of extra time to your commissioning sequence that should have been done earlier in the factory. So we need to focus on testing both the hardware and the software for integrated factory acceptance testing for these more complex systems. And that's how commissioning gets involved in that stage to make sure that that occurs. So then the next one is our project systematization. And this is one of the main reasons to have the commissioning guys involved earlier in the project so that we can take a systems-based approach through all phases of the projects, through design, through construction, through commissioning. We must be taking that systems-based approach. And that's done by systematizing the project as early as we can. So through design, once equipment tag lists are available, it's separating those out into the different systems that aligns identically with our project startup sequence. It's the only way to make sure that everything comes together and is aligned through commissioning and startup to meet our project in service date is by having our systems systematized early in the project. And the commissioning team is the only group that can do that because they're the only ones that are aware and going to be involved in the system startups. And typically there's only one very specific sequence for startup. That's got to align through all stages of projects to make sure that that comes together correctly at the end. So then the next is our gated commissioning workflows. So how are we going to be sequencing our systems and subsystems through each of the milestones in our gated commissioning workflows through construction completions, pre-commissioning, commissioning, startup, performance verification? What is that sequence that we're going to use and define for our project? What are the milestones and gates that are going to be used to monitor equipment through those sequences? And what are the sign-offs and who has authority to sign off through each of those gated commissioning workflows? So that needs to be established early in projects, well before any of the on-site commissioning starts. Next is our CMS software. So the software is an important component here because the software is what's used to model all of our commissioning processes. So once we've established our systematization, once we've established our gated commissioning workflows, these all get loaded into our commissioning software that we use to manage, track, coordinate all the work for completing projects, for completing commissioning, but also in the bigger picture of actually completing capital projects. So it's critically important to have processes to finish projects with such complex activities that are going on site. As we get further through our planning elements, we'll have our commissioning sequence developed and our commissioning schedule. This all gets loaded into our commissioning software as well, so that we can model the process from start to finish through completing commissioning and completing the project. Next is our forms and certificates. So you would be very familiar with forms and certificates that have been used on projects. But when I say forms and certificates, these aren't like paper forms or paper certificates. These are the sign-offs, the electronic forms that exist within our software to manage each of our gated commissioning milestones. So what are the forms that are going to be used within the software? Who has authority to sign off on each of these forms, and how are these going to be tracked within the software to manage subsystems at each of our gated milestones? You'd be familiar with the next one here as well, checklists and procedures. We've been using those for decades, but this is the actual digitization and implementation of forms and checklists and procedures within our commissioning software. So there's no longer software or a paper that's floating around site with illegible hand scribbles on them. All this information is gathered and tracked and entered right into the software. All of our checklists and templates are built right into the software so that we can use them from project to project. All of our procedures are in there, so everybody knows exactly what needs to be done and what needs to be checked. And then the last item here, not because it's the least important by any means, is our safety processes. So the commissioning team, as a lot of the equipment experts on the project, and familiar with a lot of these startups is relied upon heavily from a safety standpoint to make sure that each of these startups are taking place safely. So we need to be establishing our PSSR processes, our emergency response plans, and working closely with our HSC groups to make sure that all of our safety planning and procedures is in place before we start commissioning, before we start any of these startups, to make sure that everything takes place safely. Okay, so that's everything that's required for planning. The next group of activities here is our construction completions, and there's two frameworks that are required here. The first one is our punch list walkdowns and categorization. So this has been done on projects for a long time as well, but this is the process to formalize that within our commissioning software in how are joint walkdowns being conducted, how are punch items being identified, how are they being loaded into the software, how are they being managed and tracked, how are they categorized to know who needs to do what action and when it needs to be done, all within the software so that nothing gets missed. The second part of our construction completions is our definition for each subsystem static completion. And this is often something that's missing on a lot of projects, because the question in projects is often everybody's definition of done or everybody's definition of complete seems to mean something different, right? Complete means something different to the commissioning guys than to the construction guys than to the design guys. And when nobody can agree on what complete actually means, it's hard to get through each of these milestones and achieve each of these goalposts on projects. So when subsystem static completion is fully defined within our software for each subsystem, then everybody knows exactly what's required for each of these goalposts and that there's no ambiguity. The question always is, how do you transition from bulk construction to systems-based commissioning? Well, this is how you do that, by clearly systematizing your project, by clearly defining each static completion for each subsystem and system on your project, and by using software tools to keep track of every big detail, every small detail, so that nothing gets missed. It's the only way to make that transition from construction to commissioning. And any other way, if you're trying to do this by spreadsheets, then it often leads to trouble on projects. And then our last item here is our on-site commissioning and startup. And there's 6 frameworks that are required here. You'd be familiar with a lot of these as well. So pre-commissioning and commissioning, sometimes I get asked, well, what takes place during pre-commissioning and what takes place during commissioning? Ultimately, it doesn't really matter a whole lot, because we're going to define that all fully within the software. But just as a guide, you can think pre-commissioning would be the equipment level testing, so testing the pump on its own. Commissioning is moving into more systems-based testing, where you need a group of equipment to work together. The pump also needs to work with the valves and the pressure sensor, the flow meter, the automation system tested as a group of equipment. That's what takes place during commissioning. The next item, moving into our startup, so introducing our process fluids for the first time, moving into our performance verification, doing any fine tuning of the systems to make sure that everything's operating in an optimal manner. Trial operation, projects could be required to operate for 3 days, 30 days, 90 days, whatever is required to demonstrate reliable operation. Then we can move into handover of our projects to plant operators. So you can see there is quite a bit involved for commissioning to be successful, and spreadsheets just can't do all of this. So if you're using spreadsheets, or if you're using some crappy software that your IT department told you to use, it means one of two things. It means either you don't have any standardized processes and you're doing all of this by brute force, or it means you're not doing some or all of the steps that we just went through. And neither situation is good. It's not good for you and your project team, because you're burning out a lot of good people and driving them away from the industry with outdated brute force methods. And it's certainly not good for your projects, because you're leaving all the risk to the end during commissioning, which results in 9 out of 10 projects being late and over budget. Okay, so now let's look at the software systems to use. And similar to before, I'll send you a copy of this list after the presentation so you can review it more closely and see the options that are available on the market. When you get the right commissioning software system for commissioning, you get rid of all that brute force that's required to manually track in spreadsheets. All your checklists and punch list items, they're all completed in software. Your workflows are all digitized and you're able to keep track of everything. Nothing gets missed. Everyone in your project has clarity on what success looks like during commissioning, and you're able to finally standardize your commissioning and streamline your processes to complete commissioning as efficiently as possible and prevent costly delays that often result on projects. However, when commissioning software is not implemented correctly, or if you're using the wrong software system on projects, or worse, if you're still using paper and spreadsheets, you have no standardized processes to complete projects during commissioning. Everything is random on each project, and there's no consistent way to complete commissioning across multiple projects. And when you have no consistent way to complete commissioning, what that really means is you have no consistent way to complete projects. And that's a pretty scary thing, that people are allowed to start projects spending millions and billions of dollars without having a robust method to finish them. Without a method to finish projects, you require a lot of brute force to get through the end of your project, to get to the end during commissioning. And this is what results in 9 out of 10 projects ending up late and over budget. So what do project teams do without any of these systems to complete projects? Well, they've probably got their Excel spreadsheets, they've got their Excel macros, and they're trying to use those to get projects completed. They have a few people that are manually updating these each day, and they might think they have a system for commissioning, but if you ask anyone else on the project, they're still confused about what's required for commissioning. Design groups or construction groups, they have very limited ability to understand what all this means in spreadsheets, because it's very detailed stuff, right? Commissioning is complex, and when this happens, then things get missed and nothing works, and commissioning is delayed, which gets very expensive at the end of projects. So the list on the screen is the 25 plus different commissioning software platforms that are available. Now, we don't sell software. We've never developed software, and we just don't program, and we're not IT software guys. So what we've done is we've reviewed each of these options that are on this list, and we have a pretty good idea of which are the good ones to use for each industry and which ones are maybe more outdated and past their usefulness on projects. So we can show you the most appropriate software system to use on your projects, because we have experience with a lot of these software systems on the list. Now, all the items on this list, they're all cloud-based systems. And something I hear often is that your IT department just isn't going to allow it. It needs to be part of their network, right? Well, when you use the right system, when you pick the right one on this list, these systems are built on the most secure server networks in the world. And I assure you, and you can assure your IT department, that the big data companies like Amazon and Google that have teams of thousands of people implementing the most advanced security technology that's available, they have much more secure systems than your IT department of 6 people can put together. So you can let your IT group know that these systems are likely more secure than what they have. So what I'll do after this presentation is I'll send you a copy of this software list so you can take a look at it a little bit closer, and you can see some of the software systems that are available for commissioning. One thing to note, these software systems are certainly a big piece of the equation to finish projects. They're just not the biggest piece. Completing projects during commissioning is not fundamentally about software. Software is a tool to facilitate your project completions, and I think we can all agree commissioning is complex. So naturally, the software systems are going to be complex too. And the processes and workflows for commissioning that we just reviewed a few minutes ago that you implement within one of these software platforms, that is what will determine if your commissioning and your projects is successful and if you're happy with the software that you're using. So be sure you're applying these software systems correctly on your projects if you want to get the most value from them. Okay, so these are the two most common mistakes on projects: leaving commissioning to the end of projects and still using paper and spreadsheets on projects. And these are the two main reasons why projects are struggling with commissioning. If you fix just these two things with systems and processes that we've discussed, you'll make huge improvements on your projects to avoid losing money at the end during commissioning when it's a lot more expensive to fix things. So we've talked about a lot of good information today. We've talked about the commissioning processes that are required for projects to be successful, and we've talked about the software systems that are used to manage your commissioning processes. When all of these processes are managed within your software systems, they all form a piece of the commissioning puzzle, and all pieces of the puzzle are required if you want to complete commissioning as efficiently as possible and not lose money at the end of your projects. And commissioning is a complex puzzle to solve, which is why we offer support to get the systems and processes you need to standardize your commissioning. When one or more of these puzzle pieces is missing, when you're not implementing industry best processes for commissioning, or you're not using top rated software systems to manage your commissioning, then that's a problem on projects, right? Your commissioning will always be a brute force struggle to complete if you're missing any of these pieces of the puzzle. You'll never really know when construction is actually finished, and incomplete construction will continue to result in costly delays during commissioning. You'll encounter design issues that will impact your commissioning progress, and your cowboy commissioning will always be a scramble at the end. Standardized systems and processes for commissioning are required to make sure you've got all pieces of the commissioning puzzle in place to avoid costly mistakes at the end of your project. So just imagine what a system like we've discussed here could look like. A system that tells you exactly what is complete for construction. I mean, like everything is actually identified. If every nut and bolt is installed and has been witness striped, if every glanded cable is terminated correctly, if all Megger tests on the project have been completed and all results are within tolerance, systems would tell you that all pipes have been flushed and meet all pressure and leak test requirements. Imagine if you knew exactly what was complete and exactly what was still outstanding on your project for construction. Wouldn't that be helpful to know if, in fact, systems are actually ready to proceed with commissioning down to every little detail that's required? Wouldn't that be easier to know what's complete rather than being tossed out into the field and have to discover all the hidden Easter eggs on your own? Of course it would. And that's what having standardized systems and processes for commissioning allows you to do. So there's no more trial and error in the field, and there's no more searching for that next snag that's going to hold you up. Imagine how much easier it would be to complete commissioning and complete projects if you had a system like this. Now, without a system like this, and maybe that's your current situation, could you tell me exactly where your project is at? Could you tell me in just a few seconds by glancing if you're missing any settings for your switchgear, or if all red line drawings are available, if maintenance records have been submitted and all Megger checks are within tolerance? Could you tell me this in just a few seconds? Or would it take some time to have to go check in several different locations to go research these items and figure out what's complete and what's not? If you don't know your project completion status, then that's a problem, because if you don't know what's left, and I mean like every little detail, then neither does anyone else on your project. And commissioning is when the details matter. All the big details, all the small details, everything needs to come together for a final completion during commissioning. And if nobody, or if only a few commissioning experts know what's left on your projects, then how could it ever be possible to work as a complete project team to actually finish the job when only a few people know where to go look and find this information? Can this knowledge of this course aid someone to begin a job in commissioning? If yes, which position can it be? So this would be for anyone in a commissioning lead or a commissioning manager role. These are the commissioning project management processes that are required to lead or manage commissioning, either at a commissioning lead level, commissioning manager level, or a project management level. We don't cover any of the technical commissioning details there's elsewhere you could go for that. But if you're looking for how to manage commissioning, we've got the information that you need. Now, if having standardized systems and processes, everything that we've talked about in this presentation so far, still isn't enough, I'll give you two more reasons of why you need these systems and processes. I'm sure you're well aware of the huge volume of project work that's coming our way and the lack of skilled resources that are in the market to be able to complete this work. Well, you're not going to attract the labor you need if you're still using outdated processes. The younger generation that are looking to join the construction and commissioning industry, they're looking for better ways to do their job. And they need technology to be able to support them to do their best work. They're not going to tolerate outdated spreadsheets. They're going to go down the street to the next project because there's lots of project work, and they're going to choose from a different project to work on that's implementing better systems that actually make their jobs easier. So if you want to compete for the limited resources that are available on projects, you're going to have to adapt to these new systems because the huge volume of projects that are in the queue for all of the electrification projects that are underway, all of the climate change initiatives that we know are taking place, all the decarbonization projects that are out there. There's just a huge volume of projects work, and the competition for skilled labor is just getting more and more fierce. How much will cost the training and what will be the agenda of the course? And it is certified. Yep. So all that information is provided if you go to our website and submit your application. If you qualify to join, you'll be able to get access to all that information once we review your application. So definitely submit your application so you can check all that out and you'll get all your questions answered. So another reason to get systems and processes for commissioning is due to your project burn rate. In other words, what is one day of the project worth to you? It's pretty easy to figure out. If you take your project budget and you divide it by the number of working days, what does that come out to? Is each day of the project worth $10,000? Likely more than that. $100,000 per day. Projects can easily cost $100,000 per day in labor and materials and interest and escalation and everything that adds up. It's not uncommon for each day on a project towards the end during commissioning to be worth $1 million per day. And I've worked on projects that have actually had a $5 million daily burn rate. So there's a lot of money at stake during commissioning, and each day is extremely valuable. And each day of delay is very expensive, which means your commissioning must go well. The cost of commissioning itself usually isn't that expensive. We usually use a number of like 5% of the overall total budget for the cost of commissioning, but the cost of delays during commissioning can be astronomical. If you screw up one day of commissioning, your projects are losing a lot of money on a daily basis. So let's say your project is delayed 3 months, which is common, right? A lot of projects can easily end up 3 months late when you're not prepared for commissioning. 60 working days in 3 months at $100,000 per day, that's $6 million that's wasted because you thought spreadsheets could handle the challenges of commissioning. Now, it's certainly not going to cost you $6 million to implement these commissioning systems and processes on your projects. It's not a chance, right? It's not even close. It's a small fraction of that. So it's a no-brainer. This is just good common sense risk mitigation that you must be doing on projects if you want to protect them against cost overruns that are in the millions of dollars. So these systems and processes are definitely needed on projects. Ferdinand is asking, you said that technical testing of commissioning activities is not meant for this course. I'll give you a heads up that you're never going to find a course that teaches you technical testing of commissioning. It's just too dangerous. Nobody's going to offer a course that tells you how to do a high pot test in the field, or nobody's going to offer you a course to do how to do CT and PT, primary and secondary injections on 230 kV volt systems. There's just no course that's going to teach you that. And you're never going to find that online. It's just too dangerous. The only way to learn how to do that testing is working with experienced teams that know how to do that and can show you the hands-on expertise of how to do that very dangerous technical commissioning. So that's not what's in this course, and you're not likely going to find that anywhere else. It just doesn't exist. What we teach is the commissioning project management aspects, everything that's required on projects to make commissioning successful for later in the project, so that our technical commissioning experts have what they need when they're doing their expert testing on site. So if you're looking for that technical testing commissioning course, you're not going to find it. I've never found it. I don't think it exists. If you do find it, let me know, but I don't think anybody's going to teach you how to do that very dangerous, high complex testing and then send you on your way on your own. The only way to learn that is with experience. When you're looking at some of these systems and processes for commissioning, your executive, of course, is going to ask, well, how much is it going to cost to upgrade from our spreadsheet processes? But that's not actually the right question to be asking. The question to ask instead is, how much is this going to save? Because these systems and processes are money-saving initiatives. They're not additional, they're not to be viewed as additional costs. When these systems and processes are risk mitigation to save you months at the end of your project, then typically, if these systems and processes can be shown to save 1 or 2 days of commissioning, which they easily can, they end up saving you more like months on projects, then it doesn't make sense to continue with outdated processes and leave that much risk on the table with the potential to lose millions of dollars during commissioning if it doesn't go well. The potential downside risk on projects, it's just not worth it. You need to have these systems and processes to protect against that risk and ensure your project commissioning goes well. So don't overlook these two reasons as well: labor shortages and daily burn rate. These are significant reasons to implement systems and processes on your projects right away. So I'm sure you can see the value in everything that we've discussed in implementing these systems and processes to standardize and streamline your commissioning. Then the question is, how are you going to get this done on your projects? What's the first thing you're going to do on Monday to start working on this, to start investigating the systems that you need, the software systems, the platforms to use? How are you going to start standardizing your commissioning to implement these risk mitigating activities? If you're serious about commissioning, then you've got a choice to make. You can go do this yourself. You can go implement commissioning systems and processes on your own, and you can try some trial and error on your projects and see what works and what doesn't over a few years, and probably make some costly mistakes along the way. And this is actually a totally legitimate way to go. This is what I've done over the last 10 years, is trial and error of seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, checking out the software platforms. And you can certainly go do that same trial and error method over the next 10 years as well. You can select software on your own and you can try to get it all set up and attend some of the software demos, which unfortunately never really get you to the nuts and bolts of what you actually need, what you actually want to see on the software. You can try to cut through all the sales jargon and maybe end up with the right software, but maybe you don't when you realize 12 months later that the software you choose can't really do what you were told that it could. You can try to fit this into your already busy schedule and find some spare time to get this done on your already busy projects, but I don't know too many people that are working on projects that are sitting around on their thumbs looking for something to do. Projects are legitimately busy. You can roll your new systems and processes out to your project team and develop your own training material to onboard everyone on your projects. And maybe your team adopts the new software, or maybe they hate it and they just reject it, outright refuse to use it, and insist on going back to their paper and spreadsheets processes. And despite your best efforts, maybe you still get stuck with the way it's always been done. And I understand it's hard to make change. The construction industry is definitely stuck in its ways and hasn't changed for several decades. And a lot of the corporate red tape makes it very difficult to make some of these changes sometimes too. There's lots of things that can get in your way if you want to try and make this positive change on your projects and adopt some of these new systems. There's lots of things that can potentially be roadblocks. So the alternative is you can get our support to roll out these new systems and processes to your projects. So you can standardize your commissioning with top-rated commissioning software and industry-best commissioning processes so you can complete commissioning as efficiently as possible and prevent costly delays at the end of your projects. You can get new systems and processes set up pretty fast on your projects so you can start using them right away. You can have confidence that you're getting systems that actually work for your projects and actually help you get the job done with workflows that make sense and meet your exact project needs. You get systems and processes to standardize your commissioning fast because this doesn't need to take months. You can be using a new system in only a matter of a few weeks. Getting systems and processes to standardize commissioning doesn't have to feel so daunting when you get support to get the job done and get it done right the first time from someone who has helped several other groups get the systems and processes to standardize commissioning. So with our support, you get CMS software selections, so you can skip all the software demos and you can get the right solution right away. You get all of your checklist templates, whether you need us to write new checklist templates for you, or if you have existing checklist templates that you need digitized for these systems, we can get that all done. All of your custom digital workflows, you get all of that set up specific to your project and how you specifically interface to your contractors and construction groups. You get all of your systematization details loaded into software so that everything's ready to go. And you get a custom training program to onboard each of your project team roles with exactly what they need to do their work. None of the other additional stuff that they don't actually need, very specific targeted training to help them do exactly what they need to do within the software to make their job easier so that they can start using the system right away. You may be experienced with commissioning and you've had years of experience, but maybe you're not as familiar with some of these systems. Well, we make it much easier for you to incorporate these systems into your project delivery strategy so you can stay focused on commissioning your projects. You get a turnkey system with a proven rollout strategy so you can have confidence that you can make this transition without it needing to take time away from your projects, so you can finally standardize and streamline your commissioning to save time and money on projects. So the next step then is for you to actually see what these systems and processes could look like on your projects. You need to see the specific systems and the specific processes and how they apply actually to your projects. You want to see what the software looks like and how does this all work? How are digital workflows managed? How are checklist and punch items tracked and managed in software? How does the work transition through each of your gated commissioning workflows? Basically, how does this all get applied to your specific project situation? So what you need to do is book a free consultation on our website. And if you go to commissioningandstartup.com, in the menu at the top under solutions, that first big red arrow, click on that. And at the bottom, you'll see free consultation. You can click on that and get to see what this actually looks like on your projects. Once you click on that link, you'll be able to answer a few questions just to tell me a little bit about the types of projects you work on. And then on the next page, you can select a time to meet for your free consultation. It's very easy to see what these systems and processes could look like on your projects when you book your free consultation, and I'll show you how this all works. During your free consultation, you get to see what standardized commissioning systems and processes would look like on your projects with top-rated commissioning software and industry best processes using electronic forms and digital workflows. We've made the transition to digital systems and workflows much easier rather than trying to figure this out on your own. So go to commissioningandstartup.com and book your free consultation right now. When we meet, I'll show you the commissioning systems and processes you need on your projects to upgrade from spreadsheet processes. This is perfect for companies that need to standardize and streamline their commissioning with better systems and processes, but just haven't been able to get it done. Maybe you've thought about it for a while, but just haven't been able to make it happen because you're busy on projects. Well, now there is an easy way to get this done. Or maybe you've got a new project or a new department that's being set up and want to get started in the right direction with the right systems and processes for commissioning. Well, our services make it easy for you to do that, to get the systems and processes you need and get set up with standardized commissioning methods right away. If you need help building out your systems and processes for commissioning and you need to get it done fast, then this is a good option for you. I really need some advice and I'm really new in commissioning. I'm hungry to build a career on this. How do I start? In Germany, the commissioning is not that popular as in career. Yep. So we've got some good resources on our site. At the top, click Get Started. Those are all the resources you need to get started and start building your career. So check those out. They're all very helpful. So yes, the option that you're maybe looking for NADAD is our Commissioning Academy program. We do offer that, and where I just pointed you, start here. You'll see that option listed there. You can go down that path and apply for any of the training that we offer. And if you're a good fit, then we'll be able to send you some more information. For others, you may not be the decision maker on projects. Everything we've talked about today, it might sound like a good idea to get standardized systems and processes for commissioning, but of course you're going to need to talk to others, right? You need to talk to others on your project team. You need to get them on board and discuss how to implement this on your projects. And that's often the case that you need to discuss with others on your project. So there's two ways that we can proceed. We can meet first, just you and I, if you'd like, to go through your free consultation, and I can answer any questions that you have. That way you have everything you need to discuss with your manager or supervisor. This is a good way for you to prepare for some of those discussions to have internally with others on your projects. Or if you prefer, you can invite them to our first discussion here during your free consultation as well. And I can show you and others on your project what this all looks like to set up standardized systems and processes on your project. So whichever you prefer, we can meet individually one-on-one, and then you can go have some of those discussions with others on your projects. Or if you want to invite them to our first discussion, I can show the entire group what systems and processes would look like on your project. So either way, go to commissioningandstartup.com and book a time for your free consultation. So what I've noticed is you can literally change the entire trajectory of your projects when you implement the right systems and processes for commissioning, because you're able to standardize your commissioning and complete commissioning much more efficiently to avoid wasted time and effort at the end of your projects. And there's a reason that people come to us for commissioning systems and processes, because we've seen what works and what doesn't. We have certainty in what we're doing, and people want proven systems that actually work, that produce results on projects the first time. So if you're serious about completing capital projects during commissioning, go to commissioningandstartup.com and book your free consultation to see what this looks like on your projects. We'll build out the systems and processes you need to complete your projects much more efficiently. Okay, we finished exactly on time. Perfect timing. I do have some additional time for Q&A, so if you do have any more questions, shoot them into the chat and I'll get them answered. There are typically some very common questions I get during this Q&A period, so I'll just run through those while you're entering your questions into the chat, and I'll get them answered as they pop up there. So sometimes people ask me, well, why do I need commissioning software? Our spreadsheets have been working just fine for us. We've used those for years and we're getting projects completed. Well, without a system or without standardized processes, then what you're doing is you're relying 100% on people to get the job done, right? And that will get the project done if you have really good people on projects, but that will only get you so far, right? Because the good commissioning people are getting harder and harder to find. And when your good people retire or move on to other projects, then you've really got nothing left except your old outdated spreadsheets. If you want to transfer the knowledge from our wise commissioning experts, then you need to implement systems and processes that capture this knowledge in how you do your specific work on your projects. If you want to grow and expand and take on more projects because of the huge project workload that's ahead of us, you can't rely entirely on your people. You're going to need some systems and processes to back them up. It's the only way to survive on projects with the challenges that we're faced in the industry. So another question I commonly get asked is, well, why do I need processes to manage commissioning? Why wouldn't I just go get PMP certified instead? That should tell me how to manage projects, right? Well, if you look at PMI's information, it's pretty light on details, to finish capital projects. PMI covers all the good stuff on how to start a project, and they briefly cover some topics on quality management, but there's nothing on the processes or tools required for commissioning project management. The stuff that we help people with just isn't covered in getting your PMP. And I think this is why there's a lot of confusion in the industry, is because finishing capital projects during commissioning just isn't taught to project managers or others working on projects. Systems and processes for commissioning are the missing part of what's required to actually finish capital projects. So if you're planning to get your PMP, that's still a very good thing to do, and you should certainly do that, but you'll still be missing the systems and processes to finish capital projects, and that's something that we help you with. So I often get asked, do these commissioning systems and processes apply to all industries? Now, there is a distinction between technical commissioning and commissioning project management, like we've clarified to Fernandad there, right? All projects, of course, do technical commissioning differently. Every project has unique technical commissioning requirements. The breakers to close and the valves to open are always project specific. And the technical commissioning aspects are always different. There's no two projects that are the same. Even two projects within the same industry, they're still going to do commissioning slightly differently, right? Because the technical details are always project specific. However, the processes and the software for commissioning project management, this applies to all industries, regardless of the technical details. The same risk mitigating steps that we've discussed today need to be taken on all capital projects in all industries. It's always the same risk-based approach to manage commissioning so that your project-specific technical testing goes well at the end. So the commissioning project management principles that we use apply to all complex projects. So any type of process system, any type of energy system, all complex projects involving mechanical, electrical, and automation equipment that needs to work together as one system at the end of projects. So to answer the question, yes, these commissioning systems and processes that we have here apply to all industries. And another common question I get is, well, this all sounds good, but I'm busy. People don't have time, or it's maybe too early in their project, or they think it's too early in their project to start looking at some of this stuff. And I totally get it. Projects life is busy. I live that life on projects all the time, right? You're getting several hundred emails a day, and just keeping up with the daily activities is enough to plenty keep you busy that you don't have time to take on more of this stuff right now. But that's why we're here. That's why we've created these services to help you, is because we know you're busy, and we want to make this as easy as possible for you so you can stay focused on your project. So don't leave this stuff until it's too late. If your project has already started, then it's already time to get these systems and processes for commissioning set up. And you certainly don't want to miss your chance. So you don't want the damage to be done already on your projects before commissioning starts, and there's nothing that you can do about it later to fix it. You need to get some urgent items in place now for commissioning if you want commissioning to go well later. So go to commissioningandstartup.com and book your free consultation call right now, and I'll show you what this all looks like to get your projects set up with the systems and processes you need for commissioning, and get this done before it's too late and the damage is already done and you're stuck in commissioning firefighting mode. Okay, I don't see any other questions popping up in the chat, so let's end it here for today. Go to commissioningandstartup.com, book your free consultation, and I'll show you how this can work on your projects, and what this could all look like to get standardized systems and processes set up on your projects. Watch your email over the next few days, because I will send you some additional information like we've discussed. I'll send you a link to this replay so you can share it with others and watch it again if you like. Send it to others on your project team that want or need to see how systems and processes work for commissioning. I'll send you a link to the software list so you can review the list of software platforms that are available and check it out in a little bit more detail. I'll send you a link to the commissioning process flowchart so you can review each stage of the commissioning process and make sure you're not missing anything on your projects. And I'll also send you the link to book your free consultation call so you can see what systems and processes would look like on your projects to standardize and streamline your commissioning and get projects completed much more efficiently. So I do want to thank everybody for joining. Some good questions, and I hope everybody can stay safe on their projects, and I'll see you soon.